In 8 minutes, you'll be dead. Everyone you know will be dead. Every city, every forest, every ocean gone. Not in some distant future billions of years from now, but today, right now, because the sun, our life-giving star, has just entered its red giant phase, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. You feel it first as heat, unbearable, suffocating heat. The temperature rises by degrees until it becomes intolerable. In minutes, not hours, your skin begins to burn even indoors. The air itself feels like it's on fire. You look outside and the sky is wrong. The sun, it's massive, swollen, bloated beyond recognition. It fills half the horizon, a churning ball of angry red and orange that shouldn't exist. But it does, and it's growing. Scientists scramble to understand. This isn't supposed to happen. The sun is only 4.6 billion years old. It should have 5 billion years left before this transformation. But something has gone catastrophically wrong. Some unknown trigger has accelerated the process. And now, in real time, we're watching our star die and take us with it. Temperatures climb into the hundreds. Power grids fail across the planet as electronics and infrastructure are overwhelmed. Air conditioning systems overload and shut down. Hospitals fill with heat stroke victims. But they won't be victims for long. Minutes later, hospitals themselves will cease to function. The oceans begin to boil, not metaphorically, but literally. Surface water reaches boiling point. Steam rising in massive clouds that obscure coastlines. Marine life dies instantly. Billions of fish, whales, dolphins, sharks cooking in water that was their home seconds ago. The clouds of steam create a brief shield, but it won't last. The heating accelerates into a runaway furnace. Atmospheric chemistry breaks down. Oxygen ignites. The sky becomes a furnace. Every breath sears your lungs. Your eyes burn. Your blood begins to cook in your veins. Death comes fast, but not fast enough to spare the agony. Plants spontaneously combust. Forests become walls of flame. The Amazon, the Congo, the Siberian taiga, all igniting into infernos. Every blade of grass, every tree becomes ash. The carbon released accelerates the heating, creating a greenhouse feedback that outpaces anything we've known. Cities fare no better. Asphalt softens and melts. Glass becomes malleable and flows. Steel beams glow, then warp and collapse. Skyscrapers crumble. Bridges fail. Everything humanity built over millennia, pyramids, cathedrals, monuments, homes reduced to molten slag. Vehicles explode as fuels ignite. Gas stations become fireballs. Neighborhoods vanish in expanding rings of flame. And still the sun swells. The surface begins to liquefy. Rocks melt. Mountains slump and flow like rivers of stone. The ground beneath cities becomes an ocean of lava. The crust cracks. Massive fissures open, releasing subterranean pressure. Magma doesn't stay confined to volcanoes. It erupts everywhere. The planet becomes one vast volcanic nightmare. From orbit, satellites fail. The International Space Station, once humanity's outpost, melts into droplets of metal and composite. Any astronauts aboard would be vaporized instantly. There is no escape, no shelter, no hiding from a star that has enveloped the inner system with heat and radiation. The moon warms. Its surface temperature soars. Its regolith bakes. The sun's enhanced radiation reaches everywhere. The atmosphere, battered by an immensely intensified solar wind, begins to strip away, layer by layer. Earth is exposed, naked. Water is gone, evaporated, carried off by the furious solar wind. Every drop, rivers, lakes, oceans, clouds converted to steam and swept into space. The planet becomes a charred, blackened globe, solid only in the sense that it has not yet been wholly torn apart. Temperatures continue to spike into the thousands. The sun has swollen to many times its former diameter, extending past the orbits of the inner planets. Mercury is gone. Venus follows. Earth's atmosphere is incinerated. The surface doesn't merely melt, it vaporizes. Rock becomes gas. Iron evaporates, layer by layer. The planet is stripped, crust, mantle, core turned into a searing cloud of superheated particles. Millennia of geological history, the slow processes that forged continents, carved mountains, and created the conditions for life, are undone in hours. The elements that built civilizations scatter through space as vapor and molten droplets. The Earth, as an identifiable body, ceases to exist. Mars, just beyond, may survive as a barren rock, but sterilized. Its thin atmosphere is stripped, ice sublimates. Any future chance of life there is erased. The outer planets persist in altered states. Jupiter's storms rearrange, its moons warm dramatically. Europa's icy shell melts. Any subsurface ocean that might once have harbored life boils away. Saturn's rings disperse, undone by tidal forces and the chaotic flow of particles. Human artifacts, probes, satellites, stations become the last traces of our presence. The Voyager probes, now far beyond, carry their golden records, sounds and images of Earth. Greetings in dozens of tongues, music and pictures. These tiny emissaries drift on. Perhaps the only proof that we once existed. Fragments of memory adrift in an indifferent cosmos. The immediate spectacle would be a cascade of human stories, small, unbearable, intimate. Coastal cities would watch harbors vanish as water turns to steam. Farmers would see fields ignite and animals collapse. Urban neighborhoods would become ovens where families hold one another in the last hours. Emergency workers would keep going until their tools fail, doctors tending heat stroke, firefighters battling infernos that simply won't stop. These are the human moments that charts and models cannot capture. Economies and institutions would fray. Markets would freeze as infrastructure fails. Supply chains break when ports, roads, and rails are consumed. Communications networks would collapse under heat and overload. But not before streaming a flood of last messages, images, location pings, frenzied coordination attempts, creating a raw, chaotic archive of the end. Libraries and museums would face impossible choices. Try to save physical artifacts or commit them to digital vaults in hopes for retrieval far from the inner system. Culturally, the response would be messy and profound. Musicians might play until their amplifiers melt. Artists would paint in incandescent light. People would record hurried testimonies, asking to be remembered. Religious spaces would fill with gatherings seeking comfort. While secular communities form mutual aid networks, the end would amplify compassion in many places and selfishness in others. Both are part of the human picture. Technically, the picture highlights weak points and possible lifelines. High orbit habitats and space infrastructure, if available, could offer temporary refuge, but only with independent life support, robust shielding, and propulsion to move away from the worst radiation. Manufacturing in space, autonomous robotics, and pre-positioned resources would become decisive. Without these assets, evacuation at scale is logistically impossible. That does not mean escape is meaningless. It means investment in space capability is essential if humanity hopes to survive similar catastrophes. Planning at a civilizational level requires institutions that think generational of funding mechanisms, treaties, and educational systems that cultivate long-term planners. We would need a civilizational budget for survival projects, protected from short-term politics. Ethically, we must confront agonizing choices about scarce capacity. Avoiding zero-sum selection demands scale, more habitats, more launch capacity, more redundancy, so that we reduce the need to choose who lives and who does not. From a practical research agenda, priorities are clear. We should perfect closed-loop life support, master high-efficiency propulsion including beamed energy and fusion concepts, develop materials resistant to extreme heat and radiation, and build autonomous manufacturing in space. Archival science matters too. Durable physical media and redundant encoding schemes that can survive millennia and radiation exposure. Distributing archives across trajectories that escape the inner system increases the chances that fragments of us survive. There are also smaller, immediate acts that matter. Improving global cooperation on existential risk reduction, strengthening planetary environmental protections, building distributed, resilient infrastructure, and investing in education and science are all within reach. These steps both reduce near-term threats and build capacity for longer-term endeavors. If the sun's transformation occurred today, no human action could prevent the stellar physics at work, but the hypothetical clarifies priorities. Our duty is to ensure we do not hasten our end, and to use the time granted to explore ways out of planetary vulnerability. The contrast between cosmic inevitability and human agency is stark. We cannot control stellar physics, but we can control how we organize, plan, and act in the time we have. There is also a moral dimension. If we become a species capable of leaving our cradle, what do we carry with us? Technology alone is insufficient. Our ethics, art, languages, and histories are equally precious. Planning for survival should include preserving what makes us human. Imagine future archives launched beyond the solar system, caskets of culture, sentinel probes cataloging our achievements, warnings, and errors. Perhaps far-flung artifacts will be found by others, or perhaps they'll be unread by any mind. Still, the act of sending them would be a statement. We will not vanish without a trace. It is easy to succumb to nihilism when contemplating cosmic endings, but nihilism forgets the scale and intimacy of daily life, the taste of food, the warmth of touch, the ache of love, the stubborn beauty of a single flower. Those things are real and valuable even if the cosmos is indifferent. The knowledge that the cosmos will one day extinguish our star does not annul meaning. Rather, it reframes urgency. It asks whether we will use the time to make a difference, to alleviate suffering, to expand knowledge, to build institutions that endure. If the sun did become a red giant today, the end would be absolute. Yet it hasn't happened. The real choice is not between life and death in some immediate sense, but between squandered time and purposeful use of it. Will we be wise stewards of the chance we've been given? We are not guaranteed survival, but we are also not fated to oblivion this instant. The future depends on decisions made in the present, how we educate, how we invest, how we cooperate. Those choices determine whether human presence endures long enough to confront stellar-scale events. This thought experiment should humble us. It should also galvanize us. The trivialities that consume daily attention pale beside the necessity of long-term thinking. Yet history shows we can focus when consequences press near. The challenge is to extend that focus to distant horizons. So look up, if only to remember the conditions that make your life possible. Feel gratitude for the star that warms you and humility at your smallness. Use that humility not to retreat into despair, but to motivate action, to secure, preserve, and expand life wherever possible. Our era may be brief on cosmic scales, but it's our era. We have the chance to matter, to craft a legacy that survives planetary loss. The sun will one day die, that's a fact of physics, but whether humanity's story ends with it or continues beyond is a question of choice, effort, and vision. Don't waste the time you have. Invest it in knowledge, in empathy, and in projects that bind generations together. Build durable systems and institutions. Teach long-term thinking. Send out our messages and our machines into the black, so fragments of us might drift on after our world is gone. That's the real task, not to deny cosmic truths, but to make them less terminal for the things we cherish. If our species can rise to that challenge, then when the sun finally fades, it will be less a complete erasure and more a transition in a story that stretches farther than a single world. Until that distant day, we live under a kindly, steady star. It gives us time. How we use that time is our responsibility, and if we choose wisely, our greatest legacy.